anytime we talk about like universal basic income or lowering the retirement age or just doing away with the kind of capitalism we have now, right? That soul-crushing, laissez-faire, late-stage capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
People argue that if not for the 9 to 5, if we just hand people money or in some other way ensure that their needs are met and housing and food and all the basic needs, if we do that, they argue, well, people will just sit around and not do anything to contribute to society. This is the biggest horseshit argument. And Kirk even voices it in this episode. He said people stagnate without ambition, without a desire to be more.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk.
Mr. Spock.
Your move, Captain.
Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on? I'm James Kirk. These people are my friend and my shipmate. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Jolon True, everyone, and welcome to Humanist Trek, a Star Trek podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
Hey, everybody. I'm Allie Ashmead.
Allie, how's the cruise going?
Fuck if I
know. So as this airs, it is day 5 or 7, depending on whether or not you're a patron of the Star Trek cruise. So we can't really talk about it, even though technically it'll be over by the time you probably hear this. I'm sure it was a great time. You just posted all of your cosplay outfits. Holy shit, that's amazing.
This has been like months in the making, and I hope it goes okay. There's a couple of them that I'm not too thrilled about, but it's okay.
Did you have to take out like a second mortgage to afford this stuff? Like,
no,
what is it, like 7 nights? You have a different costume for every night for each thing?
Yeah, six or seven.
That's
insane. No, I'm now part owner of Amazon. That's how that works. I'm not too thrilled about a couple of them. The one for the Bajoran whatever festival, Gratitude Festival.
Yep.
So I don't know. And then I have a nose prosthetic that I haven't tried on yet.
Is it like a one-time use thing?
No,
cool.
It's actually a silicone nose prosthetic, but I just haven't had a chance to like glue it on, and because I've got to cut it to shape, my nose and everything.
Right. And
then the costume for Q's party, I'm not through. I may switch them.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it'll be fine. Nobody cares. I could go with no costume as long as I'm there. I'm happy.
Exactly. And then we'll be even more ready for next year's cruise.
Oh yeah. Next year, it'll be on. All.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's on.
Well, this coming weekend, I will be at QuadCon in Oakview Mall in Omaha, Nebraska. Woo! This coming weekend. Come on out and see me. Becca and I are going to be out there. We have our really sweet spinny board, our Dabo wheel.
And it looks amazing with all of the fonts, and that's amazing.
So you can come out and play the trivia game with us, and Becca will quiz you like she does us on this show.
And she'll stump you.
She will. And we've got some great prizes, though. We've got some stickers and magnets, and we're going to give away a couple of shirts because the ones that we bought don't fit either of us.
Aww.
So we're going to order bigger sizes and just use those as giveaways. And then we have a spiral notebook that is the straight out of Romulus design.
I really wanted to get one of those.
I got you
before
one.
I left. I know, but I wanted to actually get it. But it's all right. I'll use another notebook.
There you go. And then there's some straight out Romulus coffee mugs. And of course, our Humanist Trek little communicator badge magnet pins. We'll have those too. So you can come out and see us at the Oakview Mall in Omaha, Nebraska this coming weekend. I will tell you, I've connected with a lot more people on Mastodon lately.
Oh, yeah?
It's amazing how much easier it is to like find your community and build your community on a platform that's not like living off of ad revenue based algorithms.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, it's amazing how great this platform is.
Just in the little bit I've been on it, people are so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, just really nice.
Yeah. If there's a mirror universe Twitter, it's Mastodon.
Everyone on Twitter is just a bunch of dicks.
Yep. If you can't come out and see us at one of these events where we'll have a table set up, you can always pick up your merch at our Threadless store, and you can just go to humanisttrek.com and click on merch, and it'll take you right there. We'll just give you the standard boilerplate warning that there are certain styles of shirt that run super small, as I found out the hard way. But they said if you stick to like the standard male, female, unisex shirt style, then you're pretty safe. Those run pretty true to size. So there you go. Humanisttrek.com, click on the merch store and buy some merch. All right, well then let's get into our episode this week. It is Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 25, This Side of Paradise.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu, yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
This was a fun episode, I think.
This was a fun episode. This has us starting with the Enterprise approaching Omicron Ceti 3. And Uhura reports that she's been transmitting every 10 minutes, but they're not getting any replies. Did you notice that Shatner does this weird, like, shuffle back and forth thing where he's up there with Uhura and he does this kind of like back and forth, like he's looking around the bridge sort of move, not making eye contact with her?
No.
It was so awkward. I'm like, what are you looking for?
While he's talking to her, he's not making eye contact?
Yeah.
I thought he was like
he
just
does at the end.
Standing over her.
Yeah. At the end, he finally looks at her. But yeah, the beginning of the conversation, she's talking to him and he's just like looking around for something.
No, I did not notice.
Apparently, there were 150 men, women, and children in this colony, and they're all likely dead because of Berthold rays, which I had never heard of before.
Yeah, so apparently, according to Spock, Berthold rays are some newly discovered rays that we don't know what causes it. They still don't know, but it basically disintegrates living tissue after a while of it being exposed. And he's like, there's no way that Sandoval, who was the head of the group, there's no way that the group could have survived after 3 years.
Yeah. He says, like, don't worry, it won't start eating your skin right away. Like, we have a little bit of time to beam down and poke around.
Yeah, of course.
So our landing party is KSM, along with Sulu, Desal, and Kelowitz. And we've seen a couple of them before, haven't we? Desal and
we've
Kelowitz?
seen them both.
Yeah.
We've seen both them before.
Yeah. So they materialize in a clearing at what looks like an abandoned farm. Now, did you do any research on this?
No, but
Okay.
you did you?
I did.
Okay, and I think I did have a comment about it because
Okay.
when they beamed down, there was a white picket fence behind them, and then as they move through the colony, I'm like, you know what? This looks like Mayberry again, or some kind of set I've seen before. So what did you find out?
It turns out you've seen it a million times before. This set.
Don't tell me like Little House on the Prairie or something.
Well, there were two different filming locations. The first set where the like green barns and whatnot was one, and then the other one they had to book a secondary location because the first location, like they had to, the filming ran long and they needed a couple more weeks, but but their original location was already booked, so they had to move somewhere else. The original location was shot at the Disney Ranch.
Okay, in California.
Yes. So this is an 890-acre backlot that Disney and ABC Studios built specifically so that they could build like an actual residential neighborhood and a business district and like just for filming, right? Nobody lives there, nobody works there, but they could just use it as a backlot. But that it would look realistic, because they built it as if it were going to be a legitimate neighborhood or whatever.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it saves money because of having to film on location. So, yeah.
So a little history lesson. Walt first started leasing the property in the late 50s and then ultimately purchased it in 1959. And then over time, like he did with Disney World, He purchased little bits, adjacent property.
Bigger and bigger.
And just grew and grew. And so you've probably seen this property in shows like Old Yeller.
Yeah.
And The Parent Trap. And
I remember
even
that.
The Santa
that show.
Claus.
The Santa Claus.
With Tim Allen.
Oh, that one.
Santa falls off the roof and
more,
Tim Allen puts the Yep, that was filmed
more recent. Oh,
at the Disney Ranch.
Nice.
Yeah. And it was used several times in Star Trek over the years. So now I'm going to be watching to see if I'm like, oh, I recognize that.
Because Becca could ask that.
She could. That's true.
Don't tell her you know this.
I screwed up earlier. She asked me, oh, do you know this? And I was like, nope. And she, perfect. That's my question. Shit. No, damn it. So Kirk is leaning up against a split rail fence on the farm, musing about like how it took these colonists a whole year to get to this planet from Earth. And for what? Then they all just died. But they didn't die.
Sandoval and two other men walk up behind them, and they're very much alive. So he welcomes them, and he's like, well, my name is Elias Sandoval, and welcome to SETI something or other.
He mentions that their subspace radio fritzed out, and nobody in their crew had the knowledge to fix it. How do you get from Earth a year travel to this colony planet without somebody who can fix a radio?
Like, why would you not take someone who could at least handle the technology that might keep you safe or alive? But yeah, that was silly.
Right. So Kirk's like, well, actually, that's not why we're here. So
he's like, that doesn't matter. That's not important right now. I just want to show you what we've done here.
Yeah. KSM have a classic discussion about like whether these people are truly alive. And I think this may be the first time I noticed this, but in this episode, they have Kirk center screen with McCoy on his right shoulder and Spock on his left shoulder. And it was very reminiscent of that devil angel, one on either side of Kirk playing off of each other.
Did that. Yeah,
I wonder if that was intentional. Yeah.
And of course, McCoy, being his normal sarcastic self, he's like, well, Captain, on pure speculation, just an educated guess, I'd say that man is alive. And then Spock says, well, the Berthold rays are deadly to all life on the planet, and they should be dead. But Sulu asks, well, what if they're not alive? Yeah. And they start debating back and forth. But Spock did say, well, we'll be safe here for a week, but not 4 years, like the colonists have.
So they arrive at the settlement and they go inside a house. And this is all very Earth-like. Like the house is a wood frame house on a brick foundation, and on the inside, like it's just a period look.
Yeah, and I guess
seems like a contemporary house.
They built that. I mean, they did build that, I guess, in 3 years.
Right. The walls in this place are like a blue teal color. And then there's red and white curtains that look like, do you remember the tablecloths at Pizza Hut in the 80s?
The checkered
The red and white checkered ones. That's what these curtains reminded me of. And now I want to go to Pizza Hut in the 80s. Did you guys do Book It? We did Book It.
What's Book It?
Maybe that was after your time. Book It was a book reading like rewards program. And after you read like 10 books or whatever, you got a free personal pan pizza at Pizza Hut.
Nice.
Oh, that was the shit.
Oh, man. It still is. There aren't very many that you can go into these days.
I miss the 80s sometimes. He basically says, like, this planet is perfect for agriculture and mentions that they weren't going to suffer the fates of the previous expeditions, which we then learn nothing about.
Right.
There are 2 other settlements that we never see or hear about again. And then, but he's talking here about like previous explorers or whatever. So
to
like
that planet.
Yeah. So what happened to them? These are the questions that the episode does not answer.
Yeah.
So they split up into 3 groups to have like a better chance at survival, right? So he explains like, well, if COVID hit one of these settlements and a good half of the people refused to get vaccines and were like, fuck your masks, sheeple, the other 2 might survive.
Right.
We learn nothing about the previous expeditions because the string music swells and the camera operator slaps on the soft focus lens. It's time to meet our sex object of the week, Layla.
Yep, Layla Kalomi, pretty blonde lady, and she and Spock exchange a really familiar smoldering glance.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, like you said, the music, the flute or whatever that is, starts playing.
Sandoval goes to introduce them all, and Layla's like, oh, I know Spock. He does this amazing thing with his fingers.
Oh my.
You thought you liked the shocker? You should try the Spocker.
And his ears. Oh. Yeah, is Spock gonna get some booty?
Spock's gonna get some booty. Very awkward moment of tension as Layla's like, well, it sure has been a long time. Hey, Spock. And he just stares at her. He doesn't even respond.
Yep, he doesn't say shit. And then Kirk gives Spock the side eye. Like, okay, homie, you've been holding out on me.
Yeah, we need to go outside and you can tell me all about whatever this is.
I guess Vulcans don't kiss and tell.
So Kirk interrupts the awkwardness to mention that, like, hey, we do have a mission that we should probably get back to. And Sandoval says he thinks they'll find the settlement interesting. And they believe, quote, that men should return to a less complicated life. He says, we have few mechanical things here. Is this the Republican planet?
Probably. It's a Go Brandon planet.
Return to less complicated time. Let's take America back to 1950 again.
Where there were no mechanical devices or vehicles or weapons. And he says, we have harmony here.
Oh, wait. They don't have weapons. Okay. It can't be a Republican planet then.
Oh, that's true.
My bad.
They like guns. Yeah.
Yeah, he says, we have harmony here. Complete peace. And this complete peace stuff, we've heard this on the show before. We are already repeating some basic story premises.
Yeah, Landru and all of those, always trying to create like this perfect society, but it always comes at like a price.
I think I made this note for later, but the beginning of this episode also reminded me of Shore Leave. They beam down to the planet is paradise.
Planet.
And it's, yeah. I got Shore Leave vibes too. Outside, Sulu and Kelowitz are looking for whatever doesn't look right, whatever that is. And we get our first glimpse of the suspicious flowers.
Right next to Sulu. So Sulu gets up on a porch railing, and as Kelowitz is like looking for anything that doesn't look right. And so Sulu says, when it comes to farms, I wouldn't know what looked right if it was 2 feet from him. Which was ironic because he's next to this really pretty and out of place plant.
Right? It's very out of place. The guys remark that there's not only no cows in the barn, but they haven't seen any animals at all, which is odd for a farm. Speaking of odd, Layla and Elias are having that uncomfortable conversation you have when, like, you run into an old ex and you haven't really told your spouse about him, and they're all like, did you love him? Did he love you? Did you fuck?
I didn't get the sense that they were in a relationship, but it was never really clear what the relationship was between those two.
Right.
Sandoval and Layla, so I don't know.
Well, Layla explains that if she loved Spock, she was the only one that mattered to, because Spock is rumored to not be able to love or show emotion. And I'll point out that it's still Vulcanian at this point. We're 25 episodes in, and they still using Vulcanian. I didn't remember that from any of my last rewatches.
Yep.
Elias asks Layla if she wants Spock to stay and be like one of us, and another big red flag that we've seen in previous episodes, like Spock's going to get one with the body now.
She says there's no choice, Elias. He will stay.
Mm-hmm. McCoy is in the dining room doing medical scans on one of the settlers, and as he leaves, Kirk comes in and McCoy's like, I don't get it. All these people are in perfect health. And there's a super outdated line here that I had to look up because I was like, what the fuck is a shingle?
I looked it up too. Yes.
Well, so, what a word that didn't last into the human lexicon.
Not at all. Not at all. He says that basically if he finds everybody else in the house as perfect as Sandoval is, then he would throw away his shingle. And I guess it just means you're going to throw away your license and
Apparently, it's what they used to call, there was a sign that they would hang outside of their business to advertise their business. Professional businesses. So, right, doctor, lawyer, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was a shingle. Never knew that. Never heard of it.
No.
Spock calls up Kirk on the StarTAC. He's outside now, and he can't find any signs of animal life outside of the colonists. Plenty of plants, though. Anyway, this is odd because the records of their journey from Earth showed that they had animals for breeding and food. So Elias comes in eager to show Kirk and McCoy around the fields, but McCoy says he can't go. I got lots of medical scanning still to do. So Kirk and Elias go out to the garden where there's some people look to be weeding or something. And as Kelowitz arrives with a biology report, Elias steps away, and Kelowitz reports that the soil here is really good, and they do have a variety of crops growing, but only just barely enough to feed the colony itself, like none to store for any surplus for hard times or anything. Kirk's trying to figure out, like, what the fuck's going on around this place, and he describes it as it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle that's all one color. Have you done any jigsaw puzzles like that before? I knew people that would like put them together upside down just to make it more challenging. It's crazy.
So then McCoy calls Kirk and he says, there's something you need to see. They can never tell you over the phone.
No, of course not.
But like, okay, you got to come in here. There's something you need to see. And he'd been studying the medical records that Kirk had given him on a floppy disk. And Sandoval had like multiple health problems. He had scarring on the lungs prior to this journey to the planet. He had scarring on the lungs. He had an appendix removed. And suddenly his scans are showing that his appendix has grown back. He has no more scarring on his lungs. So he's perfectly healthy. So not just healthy, but like, reversed.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Spock and Layla are out in the field, and Spock's taking tricorder scans, and he just can't figure out why they're able to grow plants, but there's not there's no insects on the planet.
She's just behind him lurking, just waiting.
Layla's like, "Oh, I can explain that later, but let's talk about you. I finally figured you out." And she calls him right out on his shit. Basically, she's like, you wouldn't let yourself feel anything from me because you bury your human half and only show the world your Vulcanian half. Like, damn, girl, put some truth out there.
She just like bombarded him.
Yeah, that's gotta hurt. But Spock has a super cringy misogynist line here. He says, "I have never understood the female capacity to avoid a direct answer to any question."
That was some McCoy coming out.
Yeah.
That's not something he would typically say. But I feel like no matter how stoic he seems, he is affected by her.
Oh, for sure.
And she's still, she's definitely avoiding his questions. She's like, "I miss you." But he's still going on like, "Well, logically, you should all be dead." She's not hearing it. She's like, finally, "I'll tell you how we survived. If you can try to understand how we feel about our life here." And then he says, well, emotions are so alien to him because he's a scientist. But she don't believe none of that. She's like, "Come with me."
This was great. She says, "Come along." And she holds out her hand to him. And he steps over like a few rows of garden, gets right up next to her, and puts his hands behind his back, very Spock-like. Rejected.
He's trying real hard.
It's like when you go to high five somebody and they leave you hanging. Spock left her hanging.
Yeah. He's trying real hard to act like he don't care.
Mm-hmm. Back in the house, it looks like Elias has been watching all of this out the window, and Kirk informs him that Starfleet Command has ordered them to evacuate the planet, but of course Elias isn't about to leave. McCoy tries to argue that they're in danger from the Berthold rays, but not really because they all appear to be in perfect health. So Kirk asks what happened to all the animals, but Elias deflects the question by simply saying, "We're vegetarians." Ignore, deflect. I am not leaving this planet. This is a wonderful planet. So
it's the best planet.
The best.
It's the best. So outside, Layla and Spock. Layla's talking all peace and love, and Spock's still trying to get answers. So they're walking towards this flowering plant. It looks like one of those. What are those flowers? It's not, maybe a lily.
Lilies,
I don't know.
yeah, that's kind of what I got.
And she talks about, hey, I was the first one to find these plants.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, come here, let me show you something.
I really like the way they framed this shot, right? So it starts like through the plant. The plant is in the close foreground and they're behind it, and it's kind of shot through the leaves sort of thing. I thought that was a really good framing.
Yeah. Like a foreboding.
Yes.
Like the plant is in the forefront.
And Layla's like really laying the peer pressure on hard. Spock says, well, you haven't explained the nature of this thing yet. And she's like, Spock, it's just a plant, man. It's natural. Yeah. Don't be square. Just a hit.
Yeah, man.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on,
fun.
Spock. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
They get up to this flower. And Layla says she was the first one to find the spores. And as Spock's like, spores? The flower blows a load all over Spock's face.
Yeah, right in his face. I jumped, and then I died laughing.
Now, I must be remembering a different episode, but for some reason, I thought these plants shot like little darts. Like needle-looking things. Maybe,
yeah, that's definitely another episode. But
yeah, I was very surprised to see the confetti plants because I don't know why, I thought it was darts.
They shot their load right in Spock's face. I mean, so then he grabs his head and like
he gets a real bad headache again.
Oh no, the cage all over again. And then he falls to his knees, and Layla's like, well, it's never caused us any pain. Like, wait a minute. Suddenly he looks up, and then they switch the music again back to the flute. And she's kneeling for him, and he's kind of in this euphoric state, and he's like, I love you. And I'm like, what? What? Layla's like, puts her hand on his cheek, and she's like, you're one of us now. And I almost felt a little sorry for Spock at this point, because he says, I can love you now.
Yeah, I can love you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the theme that goes through this that really plays on the human versus Vulcanian halves of Spock is this, he's allowed to feel when the Vulcanian half is sort of suppressed.
Right. But I think it does somehow come through a little bit even when he's
suppressing it.
Yeah. I felt a little sorry for him, but then they do the tongue twister.
Yeah.
After that.
We get a good makeout session into the commercial. Was it me? Was I just this high, or was this the longest act one of any episode I've ever watched of any television show ever?
Yeah, I guess it does. It did seem like it.
It seemed, I would love to go back and like look at the timestamp to see just exactly how, because sometimes you feel like, God damn, that was forever. And then you look at your watch and like 3 minutes has gone by.
Yep.
So I don't know. Elias is still refusing to evacuate, and Kirk tells him, like, you're all getting evacuated, like it or not. So Elias walks off as Sulu and Kelowitz arrive, and Kirk starts ordering evacuation procedures, but stops mid-sentence, and he's like, wait a minute, where's Spock? So he tries to call up Spock on the StarTAC, but Spock's busy, and if the starships are rocking, don't come a-knocking.
Hell yeah. He's just not answering.
Mm-hmm. And I've done that before. Been laying in bed, snuggled up to somebody, and ignore the phone ringing.
But then suddenly, though, like within, I don't know how long it was between the time he got it in the face by the plant and now, but he's like changed. He's not even in his uniform anymore. He's now wearing the colonists' overalls. I'm like, what? And he's laying with his head in Layla's lap out in the field under a tree. And they're looking at the clouds. Like, he's like, as if he's never noticed them before.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's kind of sweet.
He's pointing out shapes that you can see in the clouds, like this. Oh, that looks like a dragon. That one looks like a penis.
That one's Jesus.
He starts talking about how, like, he could tell you exactly why rainbows appeared. but he was never able to consider their beauty. And Layla's like, well, you can here. And the StarTAC rings again. And Layla picks up the StarTAC and flips it open, and Spock's like, ugh, what do you want?
And he's kissing on Layla the entire time he's talking. And Kirk's like, I can't even believe you're talking to me this way. Who the fuck do you think you are?
It was
and he's like,
such a great back and forth between them because Spock was, playing the antithesis of his normal character. It was such a fun interaction.
Hilarious. And he's like, where are you? And Spock's like, I really don't want to tell you.
Yeah. So Kirk orders Spock to report back to the settlement. You're like, you have 10 minutes to get your ass back here, Spock. And Spock's like, nah.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Then there was a funny poke at military culture that I really enjoyed. Kirk tells Spock, like, you're ordered to evacuate. And Spock says, no, I don't think so. And Kirk says, you don't think so what? And Spock says, I don't think so, sir.
I was loving this. This is hilarious to me.
So good. Well, they drop the StarTAC to the ground, and Kirk's still trying to talk to Spock, but Spock and Layla are back to making out like horny teenagers.
Spock gonna get some booty. Spock gonna get some booty. It's about time. I mean, goodness. 20-some episodes, he never gets any action, so.
Kirk and McCoy have a fun bit of banter here. McCoy's like, well, that sure didn't sound like Spock. And Kirk says, you said you might like him better if he mellowed out a bit. And McCoy's like, I just said no such thing.
He's like, you said that. I didn't say that. And that was also hilarious
so good.
too.
So Kirk leaves to go find Spock and sends McCoy to continue working on the evacuation. And also, they all need to stay in pairs now. Nobody should be left alone.
Yeah, and I didn't quite understand that. There was no creature lurking about, and they didn't know of any kind of imminent danger other than the Berthel ray. So that was
other than Spock acting kind of weird. Yeah.
There was no other indication that they should do that. But yeah.
Kirk, Sulu, and Kelowitz find Spock's StarTAC on the ground, and they hear laughter. And not far away, there's Spock hanging from a tree branch, laughing.
Kirk's face was like, what the actual fuck am I seeing right now?
Apparently, this bit wasn't in the script, but when they got to the location and saw the tree, the idea came to them then to have Spock like hang from the tree like that.
No, cool.
That wasn't scripted. That was just out in the wild.
Sometimes improv is the best.
In an open meadow, people are bringing sacks and boxes over to a pile, preparing to evacuate. When DeSalle shows up with a couple of those confetti flowers.
They're so obviously like foam.
And he's like, get a good close look at these, Doc.
Yeah, they're real interesting.
Kirk is still trying to get Spock to snap out of it, but Spock's too far out. He says there won't be any evacuation, but perhaps we should go back and get you straightened out.
You need to smoke too.
And Kirk tells Sulu to arrest Spock. But Spock's like, oh fine, follow me. And he leaves.
like a disobedient kid. He's like, fine. Okay, you know how kids sigh.
So he leads him over to the little patch of these confetti flowers, and the plants blast all over Sulu and Kelowitz, just narrowly missing Kirk, it seems.
Yeah, they were all standing side by side, and so he escapes being, I don't know what you call it, intoxicated. I don't know.
So Sulu and Kelowitz are one with the body now, or whatever. But Kirk still insists that they return to the settlement, and everyone is evacuating.
Kirk is like, I don't know what these plants are doing, y'all, but we're still evacuating. And he walks away. It's space weed. It's like this planet is like the Colorado of the universe.
Back at the rally point, McCoy's talking like he's hit a confetti flower now too. Oh yeah, that could be a strain of weed. You call it confetti flower. Yeah. He's like, or a band name. Ooh, that's another band name, Confetti Flower. I'm going to make, I think I have 3 now, including Confetti Flower. I'm going to make a t-shirt that's like a tour shirt. And the list of bands are going to be all the band names we've made up on the show. Yeah.
Each band should have its own shirt, and then you do the show dates
the different dates.
Back.
Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, good.
See, look at us. All right.
So he's laying on that old country doctor southern drawl voice.
Oh my fucking God. What the hell? Like, so McCoy gets high and he suddenly becomes like from the deep south or something. Like disgustingly so.
Right. He's
What
like,
the hell?
hiya, Jimmy boy. Hey, I've taken care of everything. All you got to do is relax, like doctor's orders. What? It's funny.
Yeah.
I recently saw a post about the first episode of, spoiler alert, the first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, which features Dr. McCoy in a scene. And somebody was commenting online, like, because in that episode, he was talking to Data and he was laying on this thick country southern accent. And they were like, not someone who really watched the original series. So they didn't, connect.
They didn't notice anything.
Yeah, but he was a very different, this southern character thing that he plays when it comes out, it's so very different from when he's just playing normal.
Yeah. Like when he's normal, he's just like normal southern. A little bit,
right.
A little bit southern.
And then he goes full Southern Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
When he goes into this, yeah. So it turns out McCoy has already beamed up about 100 of these plants.
Motherfucker.
Kirk beams up and heads straight for the bridge, where he finds Uhura has also had a hit of confetti flower. She orders her to contact Admiral Comac at Starfleet, but she's short-circuited communications, everything except for ship to surface.
She's like directly disobeys him. She's like, no, sir, I can't do that.
She gets up and wanders off into the turbolift and leaves Kirk on the bridge alone. That's not normal either. There should be some crew on the bridge, like keeping this thing in orbit or whatever.
Everybody's high. Hey, I was just thinking of that song. I was supposed to pilot the Enterprise, but I got high. Sorry.
There's a confetti flower leaning up against the railing, and Kirk picks it up and chucks it across the bridge in a fit of anger. And then he leaves the bridge too. So again, now there's no one on the bridge running anything.
It's run by a computer, so surely but later we'll see that apparently
in that one episode of Star Trek. See, this is going to be so hard when we get to our season wrap up because it's all blurred together in my mind now. Like I couldn't separate these episodes in my brain if I had to. So there was a previous episode where the dude that was like hiding in engineering, and they thought he had died, but he was hiding in engineering, right? That episode, whatever episode that was. In that episode, he left people on the bridge because they were like losing orbit or whatever, and they needed crew to run it. So do I need crew to run it or not? That's the question.
Yeah.
Cut to a hallway where there's like, 10 or 12 crew people all lined up along the wall outside the transporter room?
Like being lined up at a dispensary when it first opens. They're just like chilling against the wall.
Getting ready to go through TSA to transport down to the planet.
Right.
And Kirk tries to like order them all back to stations, but one of the guys says that they're all beaming down to join the colony. And Kirk says, "This is mutiny, mister." And the crewman says, "Yes, sir, it is." Everyone is deserting the ship, and Kirk can't get any answers because his crew have all smoked the spores. McCoy's leaning even harder into southern drawl as he's talking to Kirk on the phone. He says they're all perfectly healthy, and Kirk's like, "Yeah, you've been saying that word a lot. Perfect." And McCoy says, "Hey, Jim boy, y'all ever have a real cold Georgia-style mint julep, huh?" And
oh my God.
It's just getting deeper and deeper into the South. Kirk's getting frustrated. He's like, "Listen here, you little shit. I need to understand what the hell is happening around here." He says he wants to know how to counteract whatever these spores have been doing. And McCoy says, "Who wants to counteract paradise, Jim boy?" And he hangs up on Kirk.
Everybody's just so insolent. He's like, what the fuck? So, question.
Yes.
McCoy beamed up all those plants, and it's circulated through the ventilation system.
Right.
Why
hasn't Kirk been infected?
Still not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. And whatever to move the show forward. So then Kirk goes back to the planet to find McCoy, and back to the house where he finds Spock and Sandoval. I guess they're having tea. Yeah. And Spock is like, "Yeah, McCoy went to make something called a mint julep." And he goes on to explain that the spores create this feeling of euphoria and peace, but then they're also the reason that they've been protected from the Berthold rays.
Spock's not certain where the plants came from, but he says they likely drifted through space until they finally landed here. Okay, spores through space, I guess.
I mean, wouldn't you, if a seed or, I guess a spore, wouldn't it just burn up? I don't know.
Right.
I'm not.
Yes.
Anyway. I'm not a scientist.
He also says these plants actually thrive on Berthold rays. The plants act as a repository. Suppository? That's our question this week. That he flubbed. This is the line that Spock flubbed. And we were asked, how did he screw the line up? The plants act as a repository for thousands of microscopic spores until they find a human body to inhabit. That's our question. We'll see if we got that right. They talk about how the spores provide them with this peacefulness and calm in return. And Kirk says, no wants, no needs. We weren't meant for that. None of us. Man stagnates if he has no ambition, no desire to be more than he is. Put a pin in that for later.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Very familiar.
Yeah. Anyway, Spock's like, man, you just don't understand, but you will. Kirk decides that he's returning to the Enterprise, and he walks into the still empty bridge.
Question.
Yes.
Yeah. How did he get to the Enterprise?
Yes.
Because there's nobody on the ship.
Don't you have to have somebody in the transporter room operating those controls?
Yes, and he said this later, or maybe have said it already, where you have to have, once everyone leaves the ship, you can't come back because there's nobody in there. Anyway, yeah, something's up with that.
Kirk calls engineering. Scotty? Biochemistry lab? Security? Anybody? No reply. Bueller? So Kirk plops down in the big chair and records a captain's log. This is a really beautiful scene. The music here I thought was fantastic. Like Kirk's timing and delivery, everything comes together to make you really feel like maybe just for a hot second that
this is the end.
All might be lost here. Yeah. Kirk says he can maintain orbit for a few months, but alone he can't run the ship by himself. And the camera pulls back real slowly until one of those fucking plants comes into frame. Blows its load all over Kirk.
That scared the shit out of me. I was not expecting it. And I yelped. I literally yelped. And then he just becomes mindless and happy like everybody else. And then he calls down to Spock and he says, I'm going to join you, or I'm with you now, or something like that.
Yep. I'm one with the body. Kirk's going to beam down, but he goes to his quarters first to pack some stuff into very obviously period suitcases. This suitcase was, if this was not a 1960 suitcase, I don't know what was. It's like zero effort to futurize this thing at all.
Yeah.
Then he goes to the in-room safe and he punches in the 4-digit code. And inside the safe, he's got like a passport booklet and an old medal. And as he slaps the box closed to the metal, there's this moment where he looks almost sober, almost like that shook him out of the spore high a little bit.
Yeah.
But the very next scene, he's in the transporter room, putting his 1967 suitcase on the transporter pad and preparing to beam down.
And he suddenly starts to get angry. He's like, I can't leave the ship, and I think Enterprise really is his love. And I think maybe that was for him having to leave the Enterprise, and his love for this damn ship is what got him to start feeling something other than euphoria, and it started getting him angry.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that before in other episodes too. Was it the one, The Naked Time? And it was the love of his ship that broke him out of I don't know. Again,
we've watched so many
damn episodes.
I know. I think it was the Naked Time.
Yeah.
So he's angry. After slamming his fist into the console, he becomes himself again. And he realizes that to counteract the spores, you have to counteract it with some violent, angry, opposite emotions.
Now he's worried, though, because the risk to this plan to get everybody off the spores is that Spock is much stronger than he is. So I can get everybody else awake, but Spock is going to kick my ass.
Yes.
So Kirk calls down to Spock again, and he tricks Spock into beaming up, saying there's like some equipment we should bring down. I need your help. This was a fucking brilliant scene. Spock beams in, and Kirk, who's holding a big metal bar, just lights him up. Here are a few of Kirk's zingers.
Surprise, surprise.
All right, you mutinous, disloyal, computerized half-breed. We'll see about you deserting my ship.
But Spock takes no offense to half-breed, but he does take offense to being called computerized.
Yes. You don't have the brains to understand. All you have is printed circuits. Again, calling him a computer. A simpering, devil-eared freak whose father was a computer and his mother was an encyclopedia.
Oh, now you're going to talk about mom.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
You're a traitor from a race of traitors.
Oh, man.
He just lights him the fuck up.
Harsh. And then one that made me laugh and took a moment was he says, you're an elf with an overactive thyroid. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Oh, his ears. I'm like, good grief. It's just brutal. Oh, but then he starts talking about Layla, how he couldn't possibly love her.
Mm.
And he's a freak that belongs in the circus. And that is the thing that made Spock just snap. Star Trek fight!
Spock swings at Kirk and bends that metal pole right in half, like it just crumples.
Oops.
And they toss each other around a bit. Spock is clearly stronger, and we go into commercial with Spock standing over Kirk, holding a metal table over his
He
head.
had to kill his ass.
Spock snaps out of it just before smashing his captain with a table. And Spock's like, okay, so violent emotion drives away the spores, but I don't think initiating a brawl between 500 crew and colonists is a great idea.
But after Spock comes out of it, he kind of says a little regretfully, he's like, the spores are gone and I don't belong anymore. I'm like, oh, he had my heart this episode.
Yep. Kirk's got an idea in mind, though. He asks Spock to build a subsonic transmitter, something they could use to broadcast to every communicator. Doesn't that seem like a function that should just be an inherent thing of the ship's communications? Like let's say there's 10 away teams down on a planet and there's some emergency, right? Everybody has to beam back up immediately. You mean to tell me Uhura has to call each team separately? Or worse, each individual communicator separately? No. They should be able to broadcast to all the communicators already, but we needed a plot device here.
Yeah.
Spock points out that striking a fellow officer is a court-martial offense. And Kirk's like, well, if we're both in the brig, who's going to build the transmitter and get us out of this episode? And Spock's like, that is actually pretty logical, Captain. That little exchange there really starts to show the actors starting to bond and like really find their groove of who these characters are and what they mean to each other. Like, I feel like we're really starting to see that happen in every episode and multiple times.
Yeah, I think it does definitely get better too as we go along.
Yeah, like I don't know, there's a smirk that Kirk gives to Spock, and it gives you that feeling like, oh yeah, these are characters who mean something to each other.
Yeah.
Also, can we talk about how there's a whole community of Star Trek fans that ship Kirk and Spock?
Yeah, and I can see that because I swear Kirk kind of gets a little jealous whenever Spock has, shows attention to like if there's another woman, and his I don't know if he's jealous of Spock or the woman.
Right.
It's weird. It is weird.
Yeah, he's like, hey, this show's about me. I fuck the aliens, not you.
And yeah. You just stand there and look smart.
You got to be careful when you ship Kirk and Spock because their ship name ends up either having to be Spurk or Cock.
Nice.
Down on the planet, Layla is big sad that Spock has been gone so long. So McCoy, who is still leaning hard into the Southern accent, flips out his StarTech and he calls up Spock on the Enterprise. And this scene, wow. So Layla's still all lovey-dovey, but Spock's back to normal. So he either has to fake it with Layla or actually like let his Vulcanian guard down a little and show some humanity to her. And I think my take from this was it seems like it was the latter. That he's somehow retained something from the spores where he's able to let his guard down a little bit and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Another techno-continuity question here. Spock tells Layla that she won't need the communicator to be beamed up. And I know we've talked about this before, but they need to make up their mind. Like, do I need to have a communicator in order to beam or not?
Yeah, because like when Sulu and whoever it was running from the monk dude, and all I know is they had to stay still.
Yeah.
It's weird. Definitely a continuity one.
So Spock heads down to the transporter room and beams up Layla, who immediately rushes into his arms, but he like keeps his down at his side, and she's like, "What's wrong, Spock? Why aren't you grabbing my ass?" Oh no. Oh no, you're no longer one of us.
Yeah.
She really throws herself at him like, you know, that one person you always crushed on, but nothing ever came of it, and you'll always wonder what if. Layla is like deep in this scene. So deep, in fact, that the big sads have pushed out the spores.
Because she's now actually crying and a little bit angry with Spock, because she's like, I can't lose you again. And he goes on about, it's my responsibility to the ship and to his friend, the captain. And and then he is who he is.
I got the feeling that this scene was also trying to communicate some of that, like Spock letting his guard down stuff, right? He was very soft-spoken and seemed empathetic to how she was feeling.
Yeah. Normal Spock would have been like, this is illogical, look, you know.
And then in the end, he like wipes a tear from her face.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's a good contrast to what would normally be like a very cold response coming from Spock, right? Like,
yeah. And there's also a little bit of comedy because she's like, you've never told me if you had another name.
Yes.
Because she always calls him Mr. Spock. And she's like, you never told me if you had another name. And he's like, you can't pronounce it anyway.
That whole thing. So that's a bit of like the Star Trek legend, I guess, that isn't all that clear. But it made me think about when I worked at Disney, one of the ways that they get like their cheap workforce is through the college program. And there's a domestic program and an international program. And like all the kids that would come over from China would all pick like Americanized names. And it was often things like sunshine or whatever. Like they just, would pick a word. But like, I will learn to pronounce your name. You don't think you have to make up a new name just because like Americans aren't used to Chinese pronunciation or whatever. Like I will make the effort.
You will, but
let's
be honest. Let's be honest.
Right.
Most Americans will poke fun at someone's name. They won't even attempt to try to even, it's very rude.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get it.
So are all Vulcan names in this universe made up anglicized names?
Well, Spock is not anglicized.
No, that's true.
I mean, but it just, I mean, do we ever know what his name is, his family name is?
I don't know.
Sarek and Spock?
Right. So is Sarek we picked an American name because it's too hard for me to teach you how to say it in Vulcan? I don't know.
Maybe I'll ask someone on the.
There you go.
I'm like, yeah, I'll ask if there's someone who could answer that question there. I would totally ask it.
Oh, that would be a fun. This would be a fun thing to do at cons. Come up with a question like this, and then as people come up to the booth, I've got a mobile recorder we can take out with us and record live at the conventions.
Oh yeah.
We could just ask people this. Hey, what do you think about? Why do you think the Romulans do this or whatever? It'd be fun.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Write that down.
Spock and Kirk finish their work under the communications panel, and they start broadcasting, which Kirk describes will be causing a feeling like someone just put itching powder on their skin. I can't imagine itching powder as a common enough item in the future to know, like, for it to be a common thing to say.
Does it make you want to fight? I don't know what itching powder is or feels like, so...
Well, sure enough, down on the planet, Sulu and DeSalle are working in the garden, a little too close to each other. DeSalle calls Sulu clumsy. Sulu snarks back.
Star Trek fight!
Fight breaks out all over the settlement, including McCoy and Elias. And theirs starts over an argument about what job Sandoval might assign McCoy to, since we don't need a doctor. And, they get mad, but they both snap out pretty quickly.
But McCoy's like, oh, you don't need a doctor? You want to see how fast I can put you in the hospital? I'm like, okay, McCoy, he's ready to brawl.
Elias is left pretty broken by all of this, and he starts to recognize that, like, the peace created by these spores was actually just kind of a cheap veneer.
Yeah, he's like, man, we didn't do shit.
Yeah.
We didn't get anything accomplished when we were here. I mean, they built some buildings, but they didn't accomplish their goal because they were just...
There was no advancement,
content.
no progress. Yeah.
Yeah, they were content.
So free of the spore's influence, he's ready now to comply with the evacuation. And then the button on our episode, McCoy arrives on the bridge to report that the colonists have maintained their perfect health even now that the spores are gone. And we end on a classic KSM chat around the chair as McCoy says this is the second time man has been cast out of paradise. And I assume this is a biblical reference to Eden.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But okay, fine. Like, hey, they were also cast out of that Alice in Wonderland planet too, remember? But who's counting? Kirk makes the argument again that perhaps paradise is something humanity is meant to struggle to achieve, something to work toward. And he asks Spock, he's like, well, you haven't really said much about this episode of Star Trek, the original series, Spock. Care to let us in on your sexploitations? You tell us about it? And Spock's reply is great. He says, for the first time in my life, I was happy. Oh, Spock.
I love him so much. Oh, he's like my type of dude.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but you know, I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
Humanist themes.
Well, I think we've already said it in a few times. Like, I feel like this theme keeps coming back over and over about trying to build a perfect society. And sure, it seems great, but there's always something missing that makes us specifically human. And then you really don't advance. And I think was it the Return of the Archons with this perfect society that Landry created, but everybody was mindless. And, you can only get so far. In my opinion, you can only get so far if you're just a bunch of robots. But like, I think what Kirk said about like not being meant for paradise, I think we're just too complex. We will never be satisfied with just being content.
Right. It made me think a lot about the argument against the sort of post-scarcity, post-corporate socialist future. Anytime we talk about like universal basic income or lowering the retirement age or just doing away with the kind of capitalism we have now, right? That soul-crushing, laissez-faire, late-stage capitalism. People argue that if not for the 9 to 5, if we just hand people money or in some other way ensure that their needs are met and housing and food and all the basic needs, regardless of your income or employment status or ability to pay or citizenship or whatever, you just get it because you're a human. If we do that, they argue, well, people will just sit around and not do anything to contribute to society. This is the classic, like, lazy welfare mom stereotype.
Yeah.
Right? If you just give them everything, then they'll quit trying and they'll just sit, and this is the biggest horseshit argument. And Kirk even voices it in this episode. He said people stagnate without ambition, without a desire to be more. So what happens when people don't have to grind the 9 to 5 to make some fat cat executive rich? They're able to invest their time with their family, actually raise their kids instead of dumping them at a daycare, when they turn 6 weeks old.
Be creative,
Yes. Learn new things, travel, like do things that you love. And that, my friends, is the true paradise.
I 100% agree.
I also loved Spock in this episode. I wrote that down again because I did so good. The whole like half Vulcanian, half human character was always meant to show that kind of push and pull or give and take between logic and emotion. And I love it like when they really poke at it with an episode like this.
Yeah, it was the struggle between his two sides were just really palpable in this episode. And, it just makes you love him even more just because he's caught between a sense of duty and then trying to embrace that human side and actually feel like love, which is what all the other people around him do freely. So it's really cool.
Again, it also speaks to what you just said about Nimoy being a really great actor, because none of this and they've done this several times. This, let's make Spock be emotional for some reason. It doesn't work if the normal delivery of Spock is not dead on perfect logic and stoicism. So that when they show the opposite, you see the dichotomy, and it really makes you feel for this guy.
Yeah, because immediately, okay, that's not normal Spock.
That is all Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
Did anybody die in this episode? I don't think so.
No. Unfortunately. That's all right. I know I'll get my turn.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price.
Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay off percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
All right. Well, there are a lot of great ways to help support the show here. One of the free ways to do that is leave us a review wherever you listen to Humanist Trek. We're still watching for those, and we'll pull them out and put some on our website. And of course, one of the best ways to support the show is giving us some of your Federation credits, some of your gold-pressed latinum, by becoming a patron of the show. Patrons get early access to every episode. We have some different merch at different levels. And there is currently one, we're going to do some more soon, one patron-only episode that we did about South Park doing Star Trek. So that was a lot of fun. Head over to patreon.com/humanisttrek. Pledge as little as $3 a month. Gets you all of that great stuff and goes a long way to supporting us and the show.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you got to say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right, Becca's back now for the exciting answer to our Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge. Last time on Humanist Trek, you asked us.
In a blooper, Leonard Nimoy flubs his line about the plants acting as a repository for thousands of spores. What word did he use instead of repository?
I believe we both agreed, suppository.
The plants act as a suppository.
You are correct.
All right, so next week we'll be reviewing The Devil in the Dark. An unknown monster threatens a critical mining operation. It's the Horta! What do you remember about The Devil in the Dark? I remember that this is the Horta.
I think I got hungry during that episode.
Okay, what is our question for The Devil in the Dark?
This one was a little hard for me, but we'll start with the question.
Hard for you?
Hard for you.
It was hard for me to find a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Something completely contradictory to the progressive nature of what this series is supposed to be happens in the episode, but never again in any future franchise production. What is it?
We had a whole conversation about this episode failing the Bechdel test. But we haven't recorded it yet. Shit. We need to start doing these one at a time, I guess. Okay, so we'll say...
what did you say? The test?
Bechdel test.
What is that?
That is, an episode has to include 2 or more women. They have to have a conversation with each other, and they have to talk about something other than a man.
Never heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
there was a...
only time it's ever happened.
But we haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
We can't give a... Yeah. This isn't going to work.
No.
But, I mean, I'm going to answer it because I've seen it. And there was a lot of... We talked about the contradiction of Kirk saying kill it, Spock says no, then Spock says kill it. Kirk says no, don't kill it. I don't know if that's enough. I may be thinking too deep because it's probably something real simple and I'm overthinking it. But I think they just were like so gung-ho to kill it and wanting to disregard the creature for some mining material. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. The idea of they were just happy to end a species.
Right.
If it meant that they could keep mining their minerals.
Yeah, and that's like not even, I was even shocked that they did that on this episode because I'm like, that goes against everything of the Prime Directive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Well, we'll go with that, and eventually we'll figure out a way to make this easier on us so that we don't have to try to pretend that we haven't seen the episode that we've already seen.
Right.
God. But if smoke and mirrors.
It is. If you want to play, we still don't know the answers. If you want to play along, no cheating, no Googling. Did we give you answers?
It's a creature they want to kill, no kill, and kill. No, I don't know.
It was the back and forth.
I think that sounded like what Allie was saying. Her answer was. You didn't really give me one.
Well, I gave you the whole conversation about the Bechdel test that we're going to have that we haven't had yet.
Oh my God!
This is it's like anytime you travel back in time, it really fucks up your brain.
Yeah.
It's bad enough that y'all get so high before I get here. Now I gotta.
We need to start with you then, and then we can get high after you leave.
Sarah is. I don't know if Allie is, but
oh, I am.
I am too. Not as much as Sarah.
No, probably never as much as Sarah.
All right, so we'll just let this one go. Again, we still don't. We may not even be right. So if you want to play along, no cheating, no Googling, no singing Disney songs. Set a course for your nearest social media app, but not Twitter, and post your answer. Use the hashtag Starfleet Challenge. We'll pick our favorite to be the winner. Next time on Humanist Trek, Season 1, Episode 26, The Devil in the Dark. We'll see you then.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla!
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcast. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.